step-by-step tutorial on how to feed your starter and prep, shape, and ultimately bake your sourdough. Okay, but what you got to understand is you can't just wake up one day and say, I want sourdough bread tonight. Okay, it kind of takes some forethought. I'm going to take you through a 3-day process. I have seen it done shorter, but a 3-day process is something that I practice every single week. Okay, we love sourdough here, and I make it every single week for my family. Okay, so I'm going to provide for you 2 options. Okay, part of the problem people have with making sourdough, and I of course came across this problem when I was starting out, was how to read your starter. And a lot of recipes and instructions don't tell you that. It's something you kind of have to learn. But with this set of instructions and with this recipe, I try to take out the guesswork by telling you when to do things, okay? Because technically, our starter needs 12 hours from the time it was fed to reach its peak and get hungry again, okay? And that's when we want to use it, okay? So we do our feedings every 24 hours, but when we go to actually baking, it needs to be 12 hours after the last feeding, okay, within that time zone. There is some grace, okay, and I'm not here to confuse you. And again, if you just follow along, you don't have to put in any of that guesswork, okay? But what you do need to do is decide, what day of the week am I going to make sourdough? That means, what day am I going to taste sourdough, okay? 3 days prior to that is when we start setting up for it. All right, so I'm going to give you 2 options as you can decide which one is going to fit best into your schedule, okay? So you have an option between morning feedings and night feedings, okay? And the way this works is, if you feed your starter in the morning, by the 3rd day, you will be baking your sourdough, okay, in the morning. If you choose the option where you do your feedings in the evening, you will be baking sourdough on the 3rd day in the evening, okay? But keep in mind this fact. The baking part of sourdough is not the biggest part of the event, okay? Actually, the mixing, the prepping, and the shaping is a much bigger event and takes more time, okay? So keep that in mind when you choose what option you want, okay? So for option 1, when you decide to do your feedings in the morning, okay, on the 1st day, you will feed, let's say for me, I almost religiously have sourdough on Wednesdays, okay? So 2 processes that might work for me. Here's option 1. Option 1, Monday morning, I pull out my starter from the fridge and I start doing my first feeding, which I will walk you through, okay? The next morning, Tuesday morning, I do another feeding around the same time, early, between 6 and 7 a.m. in the morning, let's say, okay? That 2nd day, in the evening, all right, 12 hours from the time that I started that, I'm going to start my mixing, prepping, and shaping process, which again, I told you, takes the longest out of all of the steps, okay? I want to say 5-ish hours, okay, you'll need to do this, okay? So let's say you start at 6 o'clock at night, it's going to be a late night. You start at 5 o'clock, it's going to be until 10 o'clock, until your responsibilities are done. You pop it in the fridge, and then the next morning, the 3rd day, is when you will be baking, okay? All right, and that process can take a couple hours because you're looking at 40 minutes at least on both loaves, and this recipe is going to make 2 loaves, okay? Option number 2 would be that Monday night, assuming you want sourdough like I do on Wednesday, Monday night comes along, you pull your starter out from the fridge, you start your feeding Monday evening, say 6, 7 o'clock at night. Tuesday evening comes around, you do the same thing. You do your 2nd feeding, which I'll walk you through, okay? Wednesday morning comes around. Your starter had been sitting for 12 hours. You're going to see it. It's rose. It's ready to eat again. It's getting ready to sink back down. It will spring up and then it will sink back down when it gets hungry again. Okay, that's the time we want to use it. So Wednesday morning, you would come along and you would start your mixing, your prepping, your shaping process, which takes at least 5 hours. Then you would sit it in the fridge for at least 4 hours, and then you would be able to do your baking process. And hopefully, if you've timed it right, you'll be having fresh sourdough all in one day, right smack dab in the middle of dinner time. Okay? So those are your two options that you need to consider. I have done them both for a long time. I chose the option where I could have it all in one day, the bulk of my work, but now my schedule doesn't allow me to do that. And so I have switched to where I do the bulk of my prep, the mixing, the shaping, all that, put it into the fridge overnight, and the next morning, while I'm, while I'm getting around the house, getting the kids up for school, I have my sourdough in the oven baking, okay? So whatever one works for you, but just know that the baking is not the main portion of the event. There's other time and prep and stuff involved in it, different sitting points and pauses and that kind of thing. Okay, so I will get more in depth with that, but your job right now is to decide which day of the week that you want sourdough, that you want to taste sourdough, okay? And then you'll need to figure that you've got to start 3 days prior to that, okay? Wednesday, if I want sourdough, Monday, I'm getting my starter out, all right? So go ahead and make that decision. Figure out what day of the week you want to have it, and then back it up and figure out what day of the week you need to take it out. And also ask yourself, am I going to do night feedings or am I going to do morning feedings? Okay? All right. We'll see you in the next video.